Do not allow yourself to be overwhelmed with negativity, shame, despair, humiliation, all those things. They are the best teachers if you commit to learning from them and making life better.
All right, what's going on, Reboot team? It's your friendly Reboot Hero 2, and I am here today with a very special guest who is a valued member of our Reboot family. I am here with Dr. Howard Rankin. How are you today, sir?
I am fine. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you so much for making the time and taking the time. It is appreciated, is like here, but like it's somewhere up on the echelon up there. But right from the jump, for a brother who is listening or watching that might not know who you are, would you mind introducing yourself a little further?
Yes, absolutely. You may tell that even though I've lived in the United States for half my life, more than 30 years, I actually come from the UK, London, and I did all my training, clinical psychology, and master's and PhD at the University of London Institute of Psychiatry. And the first 10 years of my career was spent on the Addiction Research Unit, which was a prime research and clinical unit based in London. And that's where I started to interact and think about the addiction problem. And my views on it have changed over the years. You know, back then it was very sort of behavioral. It was, you get reinforced and you've got to, negatively reinforce and all this stuff. But it's changed a lot. But I have had a lot of experience across addictions. And the addictions mostly that we were dealing with back then was alcohol and drugs. But I also have worked, I got some funds to do some research into gambling addiction. And so I know the addiction field very well. And that's always been part of what I do.
Interesting. So with your experience within the addiction field, is there anything that makes addiction perhaps unique or different compared to any other thing that someone can become addicted to?
Well, there's obviously similarities across addictions, but there's also differences. Mm-hmm. And the one thing about is really like quite a lot of the other things, actually all of them in some ways, they're so easily available now compared to years ago. And in fact, it's estimated that at least 25% of internet searches are for porn. So, think of that as a massive number. And my experience, and I'm sure you relate to this too, is that so many people get pulled into that at a very young age. Most of the guys that I've worked with got pulled into this. The youngest one I know was 5, but most will say 10, 11, 12, early teens, they got into it. That's a very impressionable age. Then if you've been doing this, well, you've been doing anything, but certainly something like this, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Break down.
Yeah, it's certainly just mental muscle memory. You're so used to doing certain things or coping in certain ways for so long, it's hard to break that cycle. It's hard to break that pattern.
Absolutely.
The brain that we have is a pattern lover. So trying to
absolutely
reintroduce a new pattern is much easier said than done. So on that note, in your calls, in our groups, you have what's called a life coaching / therapy session, a group call. Now, right off the bat, the cynic in me will hear a term like life coach and kind of roll my eyes. So out of curiosity, so from your experience and from your expertise, do you think that there's any misconceptions about a life coach or perhaps like the life coaching field or someone that a cynic might not be seeing?
Yeah. And, as far as this is concerned, I consider myself an addiction coach because I have a ton of experience and knowledge in this field. And there are so many misconceptions about addiction. And that biggest one you just mentioned is really huge. We talk about this all the time in the group, is that over time with any habit, but specifically one that's reinforced with neurotransmitters as you do the behavior, you build up a literal infrastructure in your brain that drives the habit and makes it automatic, right? And so it is completely unreasonable to think, oh, well, I'll just stop and I'll be able to stop. No, you've still got that infrastructure. It's real. It's not a metaphor. It's real. And it's driving your behavior. And it robs you of conscious control.
Yeah.
You might be aware of what you're doing, but you're not controlling it. And there's a big difference between awareness and control. As you break down this infrastructure in your brain, not by being perfect, but by having more and more wins, you get more conscious of what's going on, you get more control, and that's how that process works. But it absolutely is a journey. And this notion that, oh, I've decided to do it, every time I slip, I've screwed up, I'm back to square one, is the biggest myth that I think stops people managing addictive behaviors.
No, it's good. And I love how you worded it that way. It's an infrastructure. You know, this is not a willpower issue, because anybody who falls into patterns like these, oh, you know, it's not a matter of like, oh, if I really wanted to, like, I would get rid of this unhealthy behavior. It's not a matter of wanting. It's like we talked about earlier, the pattern that's in your brain. Trying to rearrange that jigsaw puzzle to create a new image is much easier said than done. So I really appreciate you speaking to that. So with all that being said, what is a group call of yours like for a guy that may not have joined yet?
Well, personally, I find it very illuminating. I find it very interesting. I find a lot of compassion within the group. And I should say, as an addiction expert, when I was first introduced to Elevated Recovery Program, I was very impressed because it has been created without falling into those rabbit holes that can really lead you astray. Really good program. So I'm very happy to be part of that. When we get people on, we want to talk about their experiences and how can we shed a light on that, provide information on it, get the other brothers in the group to, you know, give either say, oh yeah, I was like that. I do believe a really effective group is a phenomenal way of changing behavior. And it's got to be effective. It's got to be effective, but it's a really phenomenal way. I was actually the psychologist for a very large weight loss support group, and I saw all these groups operating. And when they were run properly, asterisk, because a lot of the time they're not, the results are amazing because you get inspiration from people, right? You feel connected. And it's so common for people to say, I was really dreading going into that group. All the negativity about myself is going to be there. And then they go in and they hear people being very accepting of them, sharing the same experiences. That is incredibly powerful in its own right, independent of content, you know? Yeah. And so a group is powerful, and I like to facilitate that group, get everyone contributing, personal stories that are relevant. We take on topics, we look at it from many different aspects, and hopefully come up with useful information and tools and techniques that, hey, try this week, you know, try this. It is not in any sense academic. It is about personal experiences and getting together a group of people who've shared those experiences and helping each other is very empowering, and it's great to see that.
Yeah, no, I love the way you facilitate those calls where, sure, if a guy has a question specifically for you, you'll answer to the best of your abilities, but then you'll essentially open the floor. Hey, does anybody else have, any input? It is very empowering to, allow a brother to speak their mind, but not just for their own sake, but to help somebody else. It's one thing to, clean up your own mess, but to be able to turn that mess into a message, like that's power right there.
Yes.
So as far as like how to go about perhaps getting the most out of a session with you and the other guys that join, what types of questions do you think that he should come maybe prepared to ask?
There's so many different aspects of this. It might be to do with How do I manage the temptation? What are my cues? Some of the common issues that people have is kind of very low self-esteem.
Mm,
And one of the things that I think is really important in this whole area is self-compassion.
yeah.
Okay. Now, that's not letting yourself off the hook, but you do not have to hammer yourself emotionally. You do not need to do that. Nobody is perfect. You're trying to make it better and move on. Don't hammer yourself, because that obviously can be very destructive. So self-compassion is really important. Putting that in the right focus and emphasis. Most people in a group like this don't think like that. There's the loser mentality. We got to change that right off the bat.
Yeah. Why do you think that's so difficult to show oneself compassion?
Well, again, it's a habit, right? It's a
Mm,
habit. If you've never done it, or you've never been shown other people doing it, or other people telling you to do that, why would you do that? Because unfortunately, the natural response is to blame yourself. There's two responses, sort of common responses, and neither of which work. One is to avoid all responsibility and become a victim and say, hey, it's not my fault. That
yeah.
doesn't work, right? That doesn't work. And the other is to say, oh, I'm a loser. I can't do anything. I'm just be too negative. That doesn't work either.
Yeah.
You've got to find that balance. You are a real person. You've got a life in front of you. You can do this. It's not easy, but with the support of others, you can do it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, rebooting is sure your own individual journey, but it is in fact a team sport. Accountability and community is the backbone of what we try to do. And the way you facilitate these calls with that in mind, again, you make it more of a communal discussion. Someone sort of opens up the floodgates and, things kind of happen from there conversationally. But yeah, like I said, I really sincerely enjoy the way you let guys put in their input and you facilitate and monitor and give correction, give suggestions. Like, I really enjoy that. So
Well,
suppose again, for a guy that may not have joined your calls, we know that self-compassion is a oftentimes big hurdle for guys like us who have struggled with these types of behaviors. What are some other common questions that you find in these group calls?
people have a lot of anxiety about relationships with women, whether
Yeah.
that's approaching them, talking to them, relationship issues, how much should I tell and explain? So that gets into some really important stuff too, the relationship with women, and of course their relationship with themselves. And
Mhm.
as you rightly say, I do not take the approach that I am, Moses coming down from the mountain telling you what you need to do. That doesn't work. It doesn't work. Okay. I need to hear from you. We are here as a group to help and heal each other. It's
Yeah.
not, I got the answer, guys. No,
Yeah.
I don't believe in that. And actually, it's one of the reasons why, I think coaching in general is better than psychotherapy.
Hmm. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, there's several issues there. In psychotherapy, it's within the medical model because that's how the business works. So in the medical model, there's a danger of somebody coming in saying, well, you're the expert, tell me what I got to do, and I don't have any responsibility for it. In coaching, it's, hey, I'm going to help you if you want to change, and I'll support and guide you, but the responsibility is on you, not me, right?
Sure.
And that's really huge. And I think coaching allows for a much wider framework rather than in therapy. It's, well, I can't say this, or I should say that, or, all of that. And that becomes too limiting. I much prefer it to be natural, human connection.
Yeah, yeah, and I love that. And therapy is something that I'm a huge advocate for. It's something that's proven to be extremely beneficial in my own life. But I find in the guys that I talk to, there is this misconception. It's like, oh, like I'm in therapy, so like, long story short, the work is kind of done. It's an amazing thing to get to a place where you can confront certain traumas or be able to be in touch with certain emotions that you've been suppressing for a long time, that is an incredibly handy step in one's own reboot recovery. But then there has to be the point of like, okay, now what do we
do? Now what do we do?
Right?
Yeah,
so we're doers.
Yeah, right. And I'm not knocking therapy. There are some circumstances where I think, and I was a therapist for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
And I worked with a lot of people suffering from trauma. And that's also something that comes up in the group too, working with trauma. And, I had some unbelievably complicated cases that taught me so much about trauma, how to handle it. Yes, I'm not knocking therapy generally. I'm just saying that in this situation, when we're talking about behavior change, it's not about me, it's about you. Okay. And actually, I changed my position on that, during my career. And somebody would come in and they wanted to quit smoking, for example. And they come in and my first question would be, well, why the hell do you want to quit? Okay. Instead of, yes, well, of course, you should quit. It's really bad for your health. But what I think doesn't matter. I want to know what because if I know where you're coming from, I can't help you. Right?
That's good. Yeah, no, that's really good. And I love that you touched on that. So I suppose one other question I had for you was, it's a bit of a grandiose one, but why not? What is, if not the number one, but one of your favorite parts about doing what you do?
Oh my gosh. I get so much satisfaction out of working with the guys, seeing people share really important things. We've had quite emotional moments in those groups.
Yeah.
Where somebody has said something and it really hits a nerve, and you can see it hitting a nerve, and in a positive way. And people saying, almost tears sometimes, saying, wow, I never thought about it that way. That is so helpful, and so that is so meaningful when that happens. And it happens quite a lot in the group, right? So for me, it's really that meaning and purpose that I get so much satisfaction out of, really.
That's awesome. So if anybody is watching this, and if anybody is listening to this, I hope you hear what I'm hearing, because here is somebody who not only enjoys what he does, but has a wide range of experience from therapy, from, addiction. Like, odds are high that if you address a question, if you address an issue, not only will it be answered, not only will it be taken seriously, not only will it be talked about, but you will get the reminder through the communal aspect of Dr. Rankin's calls that you are, in fact, not alone in your struggle. You're not alone in your question, you're doubting, you're fearing. The more personal something is, the more universal it is. And Absolutely. If you have a call with Dr. Rankin, I'm sure you will take that truth away. And you also have the opportunity to go one-on-one with Dr. Rankin as well, to really get that individualized attention if there is something specific that you are struggling with. So with all that said and done, Dr. Rankin, I thank you for your time and your mind and your thoughts. Do you happen to have any final words for somebody who might be watching or listening to this?
Yes, no matter how depressed you might be, no matter how low your self-image might be, I can tell you, you can recover from that. You can get yourself back. Nobody can do it for you. A lot of us can help you move through that journey, but you can do it. Do not allow yourself to be overwhelmed with negativity, shame, despair, humiliation, all those things. They are the best teachers if you commit to learning from them and making life better.
Dr. Howard Rankin, everybody, thank you so much again for your time.